Greetings, chess fans from around the world. Today is April 13th, 2022. Today I'm going to be looking at round one from an over-the-board tournament I played in March 18th through 20th. I played 19th and 20th on the two-day schedule. Round one, I played in 1974. I think that was his rating. USCF player. His name was Patrick Young, and it was a fun game. It was a really fun game. I got off to a good start. This tournament was the first tournament where I gained rating points in over 5 events, and I was really pleased that all the hours I spent studying the openings paid off. So I hope you guys enjoyed this game that I played against Patrick Young. After the tournament, it went from 21-34 to 21-45 USCF, so I was very pleased. The game starts with c4, and we have an English and an English opening, and then against the Dutch. So it's an English versus the Dutch kind of situation. And I played this bishop to fianchetto. The bishop is now in the long diagonal. And I have this position kind of committed to memory. If takes takes, I don't go for the lines with d4, which are more of the main lines. I go for the more offbeat d3 and then e4, which is also a good line. My opponent plays e5. I play knight b to c3, castles kingside, and knight c6. And I learned something interesting. I learned that when in these kinds of positions that this is necessary. If you play h3, black has a funny line. If h3, let me put the variations over here. If h3, white could play something like f4 pawn sacrifice, and okay, takes, and instead of taking back and letting me take it with my bishop, black plays knight h5, and white has to push the pawn to stay in the game. And I think it's actually slightly better for black. If takes opens up a nice file and an outpost for the knight. This knight has a nice outpost and another open file, and the bishop's open on a weak pawn. It's actually really good for black. Oh, that was a misclick. And white would have to play like f5, and then black takes, white goes here, and these lines generally are slightly better for black. I discovered that in blitz chess, so it was actually productive playing blitz chess to test out my repertoire on Lee chess, where I played a lot of blitz chess to test out these openings, and I learned that h3 was not a good idea here. So I played knight d5, and the annoying idea is bishop g5. So for example, if black plays something like just a bishop move like this, and then bishop g5, if they ever try to drive my bishop away, I have the knight takes, bishop takes, and I win the pawn with bishop takes h6. So due to that pressure, black feels compelled to play in the game. Black felt compelled to play h6 to stop bishop g5, which is a good idea. But now I think I could play h3, and even here, maybe the f4 move is possible, but now it's heavily guarded. Knight e7, bishop e3, developing my bishop, c6, and I chose to take not the knight on e7, but the knight on f6. I figured if I take on e7, it just helps him develop his queen and connect his rooks together. And so I took this knight, and I found d4, which I thought was a great move. I had calculated some lines. If pawn takes pawn, this move is very strong, because you can't take back here actually because the queen is pinned. So then another line I calculated was if takes, I could take back with the bishop with the tempo on the rook, trade off his strong bishop on this diagonal, and it looks really good for me. This pawn would be left as a weakness. So my opponent goes back with the rook. I take, and I play, instead of trading queens, letting him open his rook up, I decided first to play bishop c5. And if he trades queens, he has a problem right here. There's a pin on the rook. So he brings his queen out of the way. I play queen d6. If pawn takes, apparently I had some really cool move like this. And if takes, then I have like some cool tactics, but very hard to find that, even in a slow game. Queen d6 was more natural, and I'm attacking the just simply attacking the knight. So he defends it, prepares bishop f8, and I played rook fd1. Apparently this rook was just doing nothing, and there's no potential over here. So since there's no potential on these three files, rook a1 was more natural. But rook fd1 and b6, I run away this way, trying to slow down the f4 move. Takes, and now I chickened out of g4, which would have been really good. I chickened out because after h5 I was just kind of scared. If I take, I wasn't sure after knight f5 what in the world was going on here. I had calculated actually that I lost my queen, but I didn't see my pawn was defending it because he has check, and then I lose my queen. So yeah, so another thing I didn't calculate was if pawn takes bishop g5. I didn't think this is necessarily so good for me, but it turns out it's actually a nice position. This one's bad for me. This one's bad for me actually. After here, let me see. Knight f5, I could play this, but after this, see, I don't even remember. It's so complicated. Bishop g5, this queen here, and I think this is worse for me. Oh no, it's not, because rook f1 is not check, so he can't do that trick to my queen, where he actually attacks my queen. So he can't do that. So this would have been really nice for white. Maybe I should have spent some more time in this part of the game, because the time control was 90 minutes with a 30-second increment. Actually, but this was the first round game, so it was game 60 with a 5-second delay, or game, I forgot, I think game 120. It was faster. I can't remember the time control actually. I think it was game 60 with a 5-second delay. So it was significantly faster than the 90-minute time control in round 1 because it was accelerated 3 games in 1 day. And then we merge, and in round 2 it's 90-30. But this round was 60 with a 5-second delay. Anyway, I missed this opportunity to play, and that's what I had intended. g4 is very natural to stop this knight g4 move. But because I missed it, I ended up with black was doing fine here. We traded queens, and I played b3 to defend my pawn. And then takes. Rook f8, really bad move because he's blocking his bishop from going here, or he needs to be focusing on this weak pawn. So I took with the knight. I gave it a double question mark, but I mean this was a little bit hard to see, but this was better for me because I forced him to push the pawn, giving my knight a square and blocking his bishop from coming in here. But you know, I shouldn't be too hard on myself for that one. Knight takes e4, rook over, and he put all his pawns on the wrong color. If he would have played something like this, I think he's in business. Maybe he saw this and he was afraid of the tempo on his bishop, which is understandable because I'm also hitting the pawn, and it was too hard to calculate this stuff. For example, bishop here, it gets extremely hard to calculate what's happening, and it looks like white is winning anyway. So maybe he didn't have time for this. h6, h5 idea. Knight c3, going for the outpost. My pawn's actually weak but annoyingly strong because he can't double rooks here. And I traded this to get a good knight versus bad bishop. If bishop takes pawn, I just go here and everything's defended and I'm up a piece. So after rook here, I'm aiming to double rooks and trade rooks. So I trade rooks. I missed rook f2 because I think the end game is a lot of winning chances for me. If I go here, I can pick on this weak pawn. My pawns are flexible, and I can start attacking his pawns with my knight. His king is still over here. And if he pushes the pawn, I could just come back this way and take the pawn. I have a winning position. I missed that idea, and I let his rook get really strong, but unfortunately for Patrick, he didn't take advantage of this, and he should have played here, and now it's actually really hard. Even if I get my king and knight to the ideal squares, his rook has activity and can annoy my pawns. So not such a clear position. I really missed my chance to play rook f2. But then Patrick plays rook d8, allowing me to get my king in the middle and my rook to get to the f file, and now white should be winning. I trade rooks with a winning endgame, but I don't play it correctly, and I make some blunders. We're both less than 5 minutes on the clock. I remember we were both in time pressure, less than 10 minutes at least. And here I miss. I played a4 to stop the pawn from pushing, and here I miss a winning move. I just simply go here, win the pawn, and the game's over. And I played this to fix the pawn structure. Maybe it was not such a good time. I should have saved these moves for later, maybe. Yeah, so let him push so my knights can target the pawns later. But I thought I was doing a good service to myself. He very wisely did this, which makes my knight harder to get to this h5, or it caused mischief on f5. It's hard for my knight to access. I can access this square, but I can't really access this square because my pawn's in the way. His pawn's stopping my knight from going here. So I was looking at all these knight maneuvers and time pressure, and then I think according to the computer, this is very strange, but after like a5 is actually very drawish. You can't triangulate. You have to go back and forth with the knight. Meanwhile, his bishop can triangulate. It can kind of just go back and forth and wait for my knight to come here and then go here again. Really, there's no way to make progress, it seems like. But lucky for me, my opponent blundered at this moment, and he must have thought that he could take my knight at the end. And I got very lucky because after this, I just start pushing my pawn up a pawn, and he finally resigns right here because he sees that if you just take this, for example, and then take this, white will win in some kind of manner like this. If this pawn's strong, he has to stop the pawn, and then you know, I have 2 extra pawns. One pawn will turn into a queen. White will easily win. That was round 1 at the Lonestar Open in 2022 in Houston. So that was really fun. Hope you found this material instructional and fun, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel if it's your first time viewing, and please like the video, and also ring the bell icon so you can get more notifications and trying to grow this channel. I know I have something to offer you guys, so thanks for all the support, and have a great rest of your day or night.